For those of you just coming in, welcome. Go ahead and put a question in the Q&A chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can tonight. We've got lots coming in. And as always, put your name, where you're from in that chat. So let's talk about Biden's trip to Ukraine. Oh, like you said, it could not have come at a worse time. The real president is actually going where he needs to go. Trump, of course, going to Ohio while Biden parades around. Susan says, what is your take on the Biden trip to Ukraine? I heard Putin gave permission for Biden to go. Do you think the people will start to wake up more because he went to Ukraine before Ohio?
I think so. I think optically it was a disaster. One of the things I sort of counter read the lamestream media when you look at how far they go to try to sell you on the fact that this is great. This is exactly what Biden needed to do around this 1 year mark. February 24th would be the 1 year mark. And he's sticking it to Putin, and he's upstaging Putin and all this sort of stuff. And you're kind of going, with all of these American citizens suffering at home, particularly what may in fact end up being the worst environmental disaster in our nation's history in East Palestine. It couldn't come at a worse time, and the optics couldn't have been more horrific. Look, you're seeing something that's very interesting, and a lot of people are recognizing this on both the populist right as well as the populist left. So Jimmy Dore or Russell Brand would fall into these things. You're seeing one of the reasons why billionaires and bureaucrats are hooking up. This is very interesting. And again, this is part of some of the studies I've been availing myself on, authoritarian studies and tyranny studies. There is a field of study known as authoritarian studies, which is very, very fascinating field, actually. It's horrifying when you go, wow, sounds like they're just describing what's happening today. But one of the reasons why particularly liberals, but the permanent political class in general, is aligning themselves with the business class, with big business, big tech obviously to censor, but one of the reasons why they're aligning themselves with Soros and Bezos and all these people is because authoritarian regimes need cash flow, irrespective, totally independent of their populations. The more a regime is dependent on the support of its populations, the more they have to govern in accordance with the values of those populations. But if a government wants to govern according to its own values, and that's state autonomy theory says your modern state, its natural propensity is not to represent the values, interests, and concerns of constituents, but rather the values, interests, and concerns of bureaucrats. In other words, states exist generally unless they are linked in with what's known as redemptive democracy, unless they're linked in with their constituents, their voting populations. If they're linked in there, then they have to represent their values, interests, concerns, or they get voted out of office. The more governments can amputate themselves from being dependent on the support of their constituent populations, the more they can govern in accordance with their own values, interests, and concerns. But in order to do that, you got to have cash flow. You've got to be able to have some money coming in, as it were, support coming in that's not dependent on the people. And that's where the billionaire class comes in. That's where the donor class comes in. So you see it in the Middle East, where all these regimes in the Middle East don't depend on the support of their people for their perpetuation. They depend on the black gold they find underground, right? They depend on oil. Oil gives them the cash flow they need to be able to govern irrespective of how the people decide. Now, it's a balancing act, no question, but nevertheless, I think that's what we're seeing here with Zelensky, and just this, just this absolutely brazen, this brazen flaunting of political class values that completely denigrate and dismiss the values and concerns of the people. That can only, Biden and the permanent political class, the Lindsey Grahams and all that, can only do that to the extent that they are financially supported and legitimated by a whole class completely amputated from the people. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing. Ukraine is a cash cow. We all saw what happened with that. What is his name? Gold, the billionaire who's caught faking money. Why am I forgetting his name? You guys could throw it in the chat. But we found that he was giving money to Democrats and Republicans together were giving money to Ukraine, and then Ukraine was funneling that money.
Sam
Bankman-Fried. Yeah. Thank you. So I don't know why I had gold in my head. SBF. And then they were funneling that money back to the Democrats via SBF. And because SBF was getting money through his digital platform, currency platform, in the name of helping Ukrainian forces and relief for humanitarian aid and the like, but as part of the exchange money, actual cash for the digital currencies, he was getting a kickback, and that kickback was ending up in Democrats' pockets. All of that is part of authoritarian regimes and their independence, the structures that they build for themselves that enable them to govern irrespective of, and often in absolutely contrary to, the values and interests and concerns of the people. It doesn't last. Well, let's put it this way. Once the cash dries up, they fall apart. Doesn't necessarily last, but that's what they have to do. And that's basically what I see Biden doing, is he's paying homage to Zelensky as more or less a reputation laundering of actual literal money laundering. I mean, he has to do this in order to keep the powers that be happy, so the money is flowing so that they can continue to ignore us. It'll fail in the end, but it's very frustrating as it goes on.